When my little boy walked up to me with shaky hands and whispered, "Mom, please. I don't want to take Uncle's pills anymore." I didn't think much of it. But the moment the doctor explained what was actually happening, my entire world stopped. Hey besties, welcome back to the channel. Before we proceed into this very interesting and educational story, tell me, where are you watching from? UK, US, Canada, Australia, Africa, anywhere else? I would really love to know how far my stories reach, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps me bring you more stories like this that are both educational and deeply personal. This is the story of how an innocent request from my son uncovered a truth I never expected, and how the person I trusted the most became the reason I don't sleep well at night. It was a Tuesday morning. Nothing felt unusual. The sun was coming through the kitchen window the way it always did, casting soft light across the countertop. I was pouring my second cup of coffee, my lifeline on mornings like this, and packing my son's lunch. Sandwich, apple slices, juice box. The same routine I'd done 1,000 times. "Miles, baby, come down." I called up the stairs. "It's time for your vitamins." I expected to hear his little feet thundering down the hallway. My boy was always so obedient, so eager to please. But this morning, I heard his footsteps stop halfway down the stairs. Just stop. I looked up from the counter, confused. There he was, standing on the landing, his small hands gripping the railing, his eyes wide and uncertain. And in that moment, something in my chest tightened. "Miles?" I said gently. "What's wrong?" "Sweetheart." He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, looking at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not defiance, something softer. Something that looked almost like fear. Finally, he took one slow step down, then another, his movements careful, deliberate, like he was walking towards something he didn't want to face. When he reached the bottom of the stairs, he stopped again. His hands were shaking. I could see them trembling at his sides. And then, in the smallest voice I'd ever heard from him, he whispered, "Mom, please. I don't want to take Uncle's pills anymore." The words landed between us like a stone dropped into still water. I blinked, set down my coffee mug, crouched down so I could look him in the eye. "Baby, what are you talking about?" I said softly. "They're just vitamins. Uncle Jacob gave them to us to help you eat better, remember? To help you grow strong." He shook his head. Tears were pooling in his eyes now, threatening to spill over. "I don't like how they make me feel," he said. My heart squeezed. "How do they make you feel?" He looked down at his hands, at his little fingers that were still trembling. And when he spoke, his voice was so quiet I almost couldn't hear him. "Tired," he whispered. "And sad. Like I'm not really here. Like I'm floating somewhere else and I can't come back." I felt my breath catch in my throat. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Kids say things like this sometimes, don't they? They feel things deeply. They don't always know how to explain what's happening inside them. But something about the way he said it, the way his whole body seemed to shrink as the words left his mouth, made my stomach twist. "Okay, baby," I said, pulling him into a hug. "You don't have to take them today. We'll talk to Uncle Jacob and figure this out, all right?" He nodded against my shoulder, and I felt his entire body relax, like I'd just lifted some invisible weight he'd been carrying. "Thank you, Mommy," he whispered. I kissed the top of his head. "I love you so much, you know that? I love you too." I sent him off to school that morning with an extra tight hug and a promise that everything would be okay. But as I stood in the doorway and watched his little backpack disappear around the corner, that tight feeling in my chest didn't go away. I trusted Uncle Jacob. He was family. He'd been there for us ever since my husband died 2 years ago. When I couldn't afford to miss work, he picked Miles up from school. When I was too exhausted to cook, he brought meals. When grief hit me in the middle of the night and I couldn't breathe, he sat with me in the darkness and just listened. So when he suggested the pills, when he told me they were just natural appetite boosters that would help Miles eat, I didn't question it. "They're totally safe," he'd said with that warm, reassuring smile. "I take them myself when I'm stressed and can't eat. One in the morning, one before bed. You'll see a difference in a few days." And I had. Miles started eating a little more. He seemed calmer, less restless. So why were his words from this morning still echoing in my head? I don't like how they make me feel. Like I'm not really here. I tried to shake it off. Tried to focus on work. Tried to convince myself I was just being a paranoid mother. But that evening, when Miles came home from school, everything changed. He walked through the door. No running. No shouting. No, Mom. I'm home. Like he used to. He just walked in. Dropped his backpack by the door. Walked to the couch. Sat down. And stared. At nothing. Miles? I called from the kitchen. Alarm already creeping into my voice. You okay, baby? Nothing. No response. I walked over and sat beside him. His skin looked pale, almost gray. His eyes were glassy, unfocused, staring straight ahead like he was looking at something I couldn't see. Miles, I said again, this time placing my hand on his arm. Talk to me. What's wrong? He blinked, slowly, like it took all his energy. I don't know, Mom, he said. His voice flat. Emotionless. I just feel weird. Weird. Weird how, baby? He turned his head to look at me, and the emptiness in his eyes made my heart drop into my stomach. Like I'm floating, he whispered. Like my body's here but I'm not. Like I'm watching everything happen but I'm not really in it. My hands started to shake. I reached up and touched his forehead. No fever, but his pupils were dilated, huge, and his breathing it was shallow, too shallow. Did you eat today? A little. Did you drink water? Yeah. Did you take the pill this morning? He shook his head. No. I told you I didn't want to. Relief washed over me for half a second, but then the realization hit. He hadn't taken the pill today, but he'd been taking it every single day for 3 months. Every morning. Every night. And if this was how he felt without it, what had it been doing to him with it? But later that evening, something happened to my son's body that made me sit up straight and listen. Uncle Jacob wasn't really my uncle. He was my late husband's older brother. But after the accident, after I lost the love of my life in a moment that still doesn't feel real, Jacob became the person I leaned on most. He showed up. That's the simplest way to put it. He just showed up. When I couldn't get out of bed because the grief was too heavy, he came over and made breakfast for Miles. When I had to work double shifts to keep the lights on, he picked my son up from school without me even asking. When I broke down crying in the middle of the grocery store because I saw my husband's favorite cereal on the shelf, Jacob was the one who drove me home and sat with me until I could breathe again. He was steady, reliable, the kind of person you don't question because they've proven themselves over and over. So when he suggested the pills, I didn't think twice. It started about 4 months ago. Miles had been going through this phase where he barely ate. I'd make his favorite meals, mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, pizza, and he'd take 2 bites and push the plate away. I'd pack his lunchbox full of snacks, and they'd all come back untouched. At first, I thought it was grief. Miles was only 5 when his father died. Maybe this was his way of processing. Maybe his body was shutting down because his heart didn't know how to handle the loss. But weeks passed. Then a month. And he kept losing weight. His little cheeks that used to be so full and round started to look hollow. His clothes hung off his frame. I was terrified. One evening, Jacob came over to help me with some repairs around the house. After we finished, we sat at the kitchen table with cups of tea, and I finally admitted how worried I was. I don't know what to do, I said, my voice breaking. He's not eating. I've tried everything, and I'm scared he's going to get sick. Jacob reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're doing your best. You know that, right? It doesn't feel like enough. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, you know what? I might have something that could help. I looked up. What do you mean? Appetite boosters, he said. They're these little pills. All natural. Just vitamins, really. I take them when I'm stressed and can't eat. They help regulate your system, get your appetite back on track. I felt a flicker of hope. You really think they'd work for Miles? Absolutely, he said with that warm, confident smile. I'll bring some by tomorrow. And he did. The next day, he showed up with a small bottle. White pills, no label. But Jacob assured me they were safe. 1 in the morning with breakfast, he explained. 1 before bed. You'll see a difference within a week. Are you sure they're safe for kids? Positive, he said. My friend's daughter takes them. Same age as Miles, works like a charm. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? This was Jacob, the man who'd held my hand at my husband's funeral. The man who'd sat with Miles for hours teaching him how to ride a bike because I couldn't bear to do it without my husband there. So I started giving my son those pills. Every morning, every night. At first, it seemed to work. Miles started eating a little more. Not a lot, but enough that I stopped panicking every mealtime. He seemed calmer too, less fidgety, more willing to sit still. I was relieved, grateful, but then other things started happening. Small things, things I told myself weren't connected. Miles stopped laughing as much. He used to be this bright, silly kid who made up songs and danced around the living room. But that version of him started to fade. He'd come home from school and go straight to his room. No energy. No joy. He's just tired, I told myself. Then there were the mood swings. 1 minute he'd be fine. The next, he'd be sobbing over something tiny. A toy that wouldn't work. A shirt that felt wrong. Things that never used to bother him. He's grieving, I told myself. This is normal. But it didn't feel normal. And deep down, I knew it. I just didn't want to admit it. Because admitting it meant questioning Jacob. And I didn't know how to do that. He'd done so much for us. How could I look him in the eye and accuse him of, what? Giving my son bad vitamins? It sounded ridiculous. So I pushed the thoughts away. Until I couldn't anymore. Yet the more I replayed his explanation in my head, the more something didn't add up. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. All the red flags I chose to ignore because I didn't want to believe something was wrong. It started with the tiredness. Miles had always been an energetic kid. The kind of child who woke up at 6 a.m., ready to take on the world. Who ran everywhere instead of walked. Who couldn't sit still during dinner because he had too much energy bubbling inside him. But over the past few months, that energy disappeared. He'd wake up groggy, dragging himself out of bed like his limbs were made of lead. He'd sit at the breakfast table with his head in his hands, barely able to keep his eyes open. Maybe he's not sleeping well, I told myself. So I started putting him to bed earlier. But it didn't help. He'd sleep for 10 hours and still wake up exhausted. Then there were the mood swings. One afternoon, I picked him up from school and he seemed fine. Happy, even. But by the time we got home, something had shifted. He walked in the door, dropped his backpack, and started crying. Not because something happened. Just crying. Baby, what's wrong? I asked, kneeling beside him. I don't know, he sobbed. I just feel sad. Did something happen at school? No. Did someone hurt your feelings? No. Then what is it, sweetheart? I don't know, he wailed. I just feel sad and I don't know why. I held him while he cried, my own heart breaking. I thought it was grief. I thought he was finally processing his father's death and this was how it was coming out. But it kept happening, over and over. These waves of sadness that came out of nowhere and left him shaking and sobbing in my arms. And then there was the disconnection. That's the only word I have for it. Miles started to seem absent. Like he was there physically, but not mentally. I'd ask him a question and he'd stare at me blankly for several seconds before responding. Like he had to pull himself back from wherever his mind had wandered. His teacher called me once. Said he'd been zoning out in class. Staring at the wall for minutes at a time. Not responding when she called his name. Is everything okay at home? She asked gently. Yes, I said automatically. We're fine. He's just adjusting. His father passed away 2 years ago, and I think he's still processing. She was understanding, sympathetic, but I could hear the concern in her voice. And I felt it too, deep in my gut, this gnawing feeling that something was wrong. But I didn't know what, and I didn't know who to blame. So I blamed myself. Maybe I'm not giving him enough attention. Maybe I'm working too much. Maybe I'm not handling my own grief well enough and he's picking up on it. I blamed everything except the one thing I should have questioned from the start. Those pills. But the real shock came when his teacher called me with a concern I'd never imagined. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. I was at work, in the middle of a meeting, when my phone started buzzing on the table. I glanced down and saw the school's number flashing across the screen. My stomach immediately dropped. You know that feeling, that instant panic that hits when your child's school calls in the middle of the day, because they never call with good news. They never call to say, "Hey, just wanted to let you know your kid is doing great." They call when something's wrong. I excused myself from the meeting and stepped into the hallway, my heart already pounding. "Hello? Mrs. Anderson." It was the school nurse. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the undercurrent of concern. "I have Miles here in my office. He's okay, but I think you should come pick him up." "What happened?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Is he hurt?" "No, he's not hurt," she said quickly. "But he had an episode in class. His teacher said he seemed disoriented. He was staring at nothing for several minutes, and when she tried to get his attention, he didn't respond. Then he stood up suddenly and said he felt dizzy. She brought him to me right away. My hands were shaking. Is he okay now? He's sitting here with me. He seems more alert, but he's very pale and his hands are trembling. Mrs. Anderson, I need to ask you something. Has Miles been feeling unwell lately? Any changes in his behavior or health? I opened my mouth to say no, to say everything was fine, but the words stuck in my throat. Because everything wasn't fine, and I'd known it for weeks. He's been tired, I admitted quietly. More emotional than usual. But I thought it was just stress. He lost his father 2 years ago and I thought maybe he was still processing. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then the nurse said something that made my blood run cold. Mrs. Anderson, I think you should take Miles to see a doctor. Today, if possible. His symptoms, the fatigue, the mood changes, the episodes like this one, they're concerning. Something isn't right inside him. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I'll be there in 15 minutes, I said. Take your time and drive safely. He's okay right now, but please, make an appointment with his pediatrician as soon as possible. I hung up and stood there in the hallway, my phone still pressed to my ear, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to push down the rising panic that was threatening to swallow me whole. Something isn't right inside him. Those words kept echoing in my head as I grabbed my purse, told my boss I had an emergency, and rushed to my car. The drive to the school felt like the longest 15 minutes of my life. My mind was racing, playing through every moment of the past few months. Every time Miles had seemed off. Every time I told myself it was nothing. Every time I'd pushed my concerns aside because I didn't want to be an overreactive mother. When I got to the school, I practically ran to the nurse's office. Miles was sitting in a chair by her desk, his backpack at his feet. He looked so small, so fragile. His skin was pale, almost gray, and his eyes had this hollow, empty look that made my heart break. Baby, I said, rushing to him and pulling him into my arms. Are you okay? He nodded against my shoulder, but he didn't say anything. Just held on to me like I was the only solid thing in a world that was spinning out of control. The nurse stood up and handed me a form. I've written down everything that happened. Show this to his doctor. And Mrs. Anderson? She looked at me with genuine concern in her eyes. Don't wait. Make that appointment today. I nodded, unable to speak. I signed Miles out, took his hand, and led him to the car. He was quiet the whole drive home. Didn't ask to turn on the radio. Didn't ask for a snack. Just sat in the back seat staring out the window with that same distant look in his eyes. As soon as we got home, I called the pediatrician's office. They usually made you wait weeks for an appointment. But when I explained what had happened when I told them about the episode at school, the nurse's concern, the symptoms, they told me to bring him in immediately. We have an opening at 4 p.m., the receptionist said. Can you make it? Yes, thank you, we'll be there. I hung up and looked at Miles, who had curled up on the couch with his favorite blanket. Baby, we're going to see Dr. Harris this afternoon, okay? She's going to help us figure out what's going on. He nodded. Okay, Mommy. Everything's going to be fine, I said, more to myself than to him. But I didn't believe it. Because deep in my gut, I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. And that afternoon, when we sat in Dr. Harris's office and I watched her face change as I explained Miles's symptoms, I realized I was right to be afraid. That was when the nurse gently told me, "Ma'am, something isn't right inside him." Dr. Harris had been Miles's pediatrician since he was born. She was the kind of doctor who remembered your child's name, who asked about their hobbies, who made them feel safe. Miles loved her. But that afternoon, when we walked into her office and I saw the concern on her face, I knew this wasn't going to be a routine visit. She knelt down in front of Miles and smiled warmly. Miles nodded but didn't say anything. "Can you tell me how you're feeling right now?" He shrugged. "Tired. Anything else? Any pain?" "Dizziness. Sometimes I feel dizzy," he admitted quietly. "And sometimes my tummy hurts." Dr. Harris nodded and gently examined him, checked his eyes, his ears, his throat, listened to his heart and lungs, asked him to follow her finger with his eyes, and I watched her face the entire time. Watched the way her expression shifted from professional calm to something else. Something that made my stomach twist. "Mrs. Anderson," she said finally, straightening up, "can I speak with you privately for a moment?" My heart dropped. "Of course." She turned to Miles. "Buddy, I need you to sit right here and color for a few minutes while I talk to your mom, okay? We'll be right outside." Miles nodded and picked up a crayon. He didn't even seem fazed. He was so used to doctor visits, so used to adults whispering about him while he sat there and pretended not to notice. Dr. Harris led me into the hallway and closed the door behind us. And the moment we were alone, her expression changed completely. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice already shaking. "What's wrong with him?" She took a breath. "I need you to tell me everything, every symptom you've noticed. Everything that's changed in the past few months. Don't leave anything out." So I told her. About the tiredness, the mood swings, the disconnection, the episodes at school, the way he'd zone out and stare at nothing, the way he'd told me he felt like he was floating, like he wasn't really there. Dr. Harris listened to every word, her expression growing more serious with each sentence. "Is he on any medications?" she asked. I hesitated. "Just vitamins. His uncle gave them to us to help with his appetite." Her eyes sharpened. "What kind of vitamins?" "I don't know exactly. They're just white pills. Uncle Jacob said they were natural, that he takes them himself. Do you have the bottle with you?" I shook my head. "It's at home. I need you to bring it to me, today, as soon as possible." Her voice was urgent now. "Mrs. Anderson, the symptoms you're describing, the fatigue, the mood changes, the cognitive disconnection, the dizziness, these aren't normal for a child Miles's age. And if he's taking something that isn't properly labeled or prescribed." She trailed off, but I could hear what she wasn't saying. "You think the pills are causing this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but I need to see them, and I'm going to run some blood tests. I want to check his hormone levels, his neurological function, and screen for any substances that shouldn't be in his system." Substances. That word hung in the air between us like a weight. "You think someone is poisoning my son?" The words felt absurd coming out of my mouth, like something from a TV show, not something that happened in real life. "I don't think anything yet," Dr. Harris said carefully, "but I need to rule things out. And I need you to trust me on this. If he's been taking those pills regularly, stop giving them to him immediately. Don't give him another dose until I can analyze what's in them." I nodded, my whole body numb. "Okay, I'll stop. And I'll bring you the bottle." "Good. I'm going to take some blood now and send it to the lab. We should have results in a few days. In the meantime, watch him closely. If he has another episode, bring him to the ER immediately. Don't wait." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Is he going to be okay?" Dr. Harris put her hand on my shoulder. "We're going to figure this out. But I need you to be honest with me moving forward. About everything. Can you do that?" "Yes," I whispered. "I promise." We went back into the room. Dr. Harris explained to Miles that she needed to take some blood to make sure he was healthy. He was scared. He'd always hated needles, but he was so tired he barely reacted. He just sat there and let her do it, staring at the wall with those empty eyes. And I sat beside him, holding his other hand, trying not to fall apart. After we left the office, I drove straight home. The bottle of pills was sitting in the kitchen cabinet, right where I'd left it that morning. I grabbed it and stared at it. Really looked at it for the first time. No label, no ingredients list, no indication of what was inside, just a plain white bottle with plain white pills. How had I not questioned this before? How had I just trusted blindly? I felt sick, angry, terrified. I grabbed my phone and called Jacob. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, how's it going?" "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice cold. "Now." There was a pause. "Is everything okay?" "No, everything is not okay. I need you to come over. Right now." "I'm on my way." Then the doctor asked me a question no mother wants to hear. Jacob showed up 20 minutes later. I heard his car pull into the driveway, heard his footsteps on the porch, heard him knock gently on the door. I didn't get up to let him in. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at that bottle of pills, my hands shaking. He knocked again. "It's me. Can I come in?" "It's open," I called out flatly. The door creaked open and Jacob stepped inside. He was smiling at first, that warm, familiar smile, but it faded the moment he saw my face. "What's wrong?" he asked, closing the door behind him. I held up the bottle. "These. What are they?" His expression flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. "They're the vitamins I gave you, for Miles." "Why? What happened?" "What happened is that my son collapsed at school today," I said, my voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "What happened is that his doctor is running blood tests because she thinks something in his system is making him sick. What happened is that I've been giving my child pills that have no label, no ingredients list, nothing, and I didn't even question it because I trusted you." Jacob's face went pale. "I swear, I didn't know." "Didn't know what?" I snapped, standing up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "What are these, Jacob? And don't lie to me." He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely panicked. "They're supplements. That's what I was told. A friend of mine." "A friend? You gave my son pills from a friend?" "He said they were safe. He said his own kids take them." "Who is this friend?" "His name is Marcus. He works in—" "I don't care where he works," I shouted. "I care about what you gave my son." Dr. Harris said Miles's symptoms. The tiredness, the mood swings, the disconnection, they're not normal. She thinks these pills might be causing it. Jacob's face crumbled. "Oh my God, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." "Then why didn't you check?" My voice broke. "Why didn't you ask questions? Why didn't you make sure they were actually safe before you gave them to a 7-year-old child?" He didn't have an answer. He just stood there, looking at me with guilty, frightened eyes. "The doctor is analyzing them," I said coldly. "She's going to find out exactly what's in them. And if you're lying to me if you knew these were dangerous—" "I didn't," he said desperately. "I swear on my brother's grave, I thought they were helping. I thought—" "You thought wrong." I shoved the bottle toward him. "Take these. Get out of my house. And don't come back until you can tell me the truth. Please," he begged. "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You gave my son something you didn't understand. You put his life at risk. And now I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Tears were streaming down my face now. I couldn't hold them back anymore. Jacob looked like he wanted to say something else, but he just grabbed the bottle and walked toward the door. Before he left, he turned back. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt him. You have to believe me." I didn't respond. I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting for him to leave. And when the door finally closed behind him, I sank to the floor and sobbed. Because the man I'd trusted, the man who'd been our rock, had just shattered everything. And if you're finding this story as shocking as I did living through it, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me continue sharing these real, raw stories that need to be told. And when I stepped outside the hospital, Uncle Jacob was already waiting for me, as if he knew. 3 days later, the test results came back. Dr. Harris called me personally. Her voice was tight, controlled, the way doctors sound when they're trying to stay professional while delivering devastating news. "Mrs. Anderson, we need to talk. Can you come in today?" My stomach dropped. "What did you find?" "I'd rather discuss this in person. Can you come at 2 p.m.? I wanted to scream at her to just tell me, to stop making me wait, but I knew better. "Yes. I'll be there." I left Miles with a neighbor, someone I actually trusted, and drove to the doctor's office with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Dr. Harris was waiting for me, She closed the door to her office and gestured for me to sit. "What's going on?" I asked immediately. "What was in those pills?" She pulled out a printed report and slid it across the desk. The lab found traces of benzodiazepines and a mild antipsychotic. I stared at her. What does that mean? Benzodiazepines are sedatives. They're used to treat anxiety and insomnia in adults. The antipsychotic is typically prescribed for mood disorders. Neither of these should ever be given to a child without proper medical supervision, and certainly not at the levels we found in Miles's system. The room started spinning. "Someone has been medicating your son, doctor," Harris said gently, "heavily. And that's what's been causing his symptoms, the fatigue, the mood changes, the cognitive disconnection. His little body has been fighting these chemicals for months." "Oh my God," I whispered. "Oh my God. Mrs. Anderson, I need to ask you directly, who gave him these pills?" "His uncle, my late husband's brother, Jacob." Her expression hardened. "And did Jacob tell you what they were?" "He said they were vitamins, natural appetite boosters." "They are absolutely not vitamins. These are controlled substances, prescription medications, and giving them to a child without medical oversight is illegal." My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. "Is Miles going to be okay?" "Yes. Now that he's stopped taking them, his body will detox over the next few weeks. But I'm going to monitor him closely. And Mrs. Anderson," she paused, "I'm legally obligated to report this." "Report it to who?" "Child Protective Services, and possibly the police." I felt like I was going to be sick. "I know this is overwhelming, doctor," Harris said softly, "but someone drugged your child. Whether intentionally or through negligence, they put his health at serious risk. This needs to be investigated." I nodded numbly. "Okay, do what you need to do. In the meantime, keep Miles away from Jacob. Don't let him near your son until this is sorted out." "I won't," I said. "I promise." I left the office in a daze. Got in my car. Sat there in the parking lot staring at nothing. And then I called Jacob. He answered immediately. "Did the results come back?" "Yes." "And?" "You lied to me." Silence. "Those pills weren't vitamins," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "They were sedatives. And antipsychotics. You've been drugging my son." "What? No. That's not." "Don't lie to me anymore," I screamed. "The doctor found them in his blood. You poisoned him." "I didn't know." Jacob's voice cracked. "I swear. I didn't know what they were." "Then where did you get them?" More silence. "Jacob, answer me. Where did you get those pills?" "From Mom," he whispered finally. I froze. "What?" "From your mother-in-law. She gave them to me. She told me to give them to Miles." The world stopped, and the name he mentioned next shattered everything I believed about my family. I don't remember driving to her house. I don't remember parking or walking up the driveway or knocking on the door. I just remember standing there when she opened it, looking at her face, this woman I'd known for over a decade, and realizing I didn't know her at all. "Sweetheart," she said, smiling. "This is a nice surprise. Come in." "No," I said coldly. "We need to talk. Now." Her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" "Jacob told me everything." The color drained from her face. "You gave him those pills," I continued, my voice shaking. "You told him to give them to Miles. You've been drugging my son." She stepped back, her hand going to her chest. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I pushed past her into the house. "Because the doctor says my son has been taking sedatives and antipsychotics for months. Prescription medications. That you provided." She closed the door and turned to face me, tears already forming in her eyes. "I was trying to help." "Help? You call poisoning a child helping?" "He was showing signs," she cried. "The same signs your father-in-law showed before he—" She stopped, covered her mouth. "Before he what?" I demanded. She sank onto the couch, sobbing. "Before he got worse. Before the doctors diagnosed him. Before he became someone I didn't recognize." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "My husband," she whispered. "Miles's grandfather. He had bipolar disorder. and schizophrenia. And I watched him suffer for years before he finally got help. And by then, she looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. By then, it was too late. He'd lost so much time, so much of his life. My anger wavered, just slightly. What does that have to do with Miles? I saw the same signs in Miles. The mood swings, the disconnection, the sadness, and I panicked. I thought if I could intervene early, if I could calm his mind before it spiraled, maybe I could save him from that pain. So, you decided to drug him? I said incredulously. Without asking me? Without talking to a doctor? I was scared, she sobbed. I didn't want him to end up like his grandfather. So you asked Jacob to give him medication meant for adults? Medication that could have killed him? I didn't think. No, you didn't think, I shouted. You didn't think about his safety. You didn't think about what was best for him. You just acted out of fear and nearly destroyed my son in the process. She was crying too hard to respond now. I stood there, shaking, trying to process everything. Trying to understand how someone who claimed to love Miles could have done something so reckless. So dangerous. The doctor reported you, I said finally. Child Protective Services will be involved. Maybe the police. I don't know what's going to happen, but you need to prepare yourself. Please, she begged. Please don't take him away from me. He's all I have left of my son. You should have thought of that before you drugged him. I turned to leave. Wait, she called out. There's something else. Something you need to know. I stopped. What? She took a shaky breath. The pills. I didn't get them from a doctor. My blood ran cold. Then where? From someone I met online. A support group for parents of children with behavioral issues. They said the medications would help. That they were safe. I felt like I was going to vomit. You gave my son pills from a stranger on the internet? She nodded, sobbing. I didn't say another word. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove away. If you're still with me through this emotional journey, please hit that subscribe button. These stories are hard to tell, but they're important, and your support helps me keep sharing them. But what she admitted afterward hurt far more than the pills ever could. I couldn't go home. Not yet. I was too angry, too hurt, too overwhelmed, so I drove. Just drove aimlessly through the city until I found myself parked outside the cemetery where my husband was buried. I walked to his grave and sat down in the grass beside it. I don't know what to do. I whispered to the headstone. Your mother. Your brother. They've been lying to me. Hurting Miles. And I don't know how to fix this. The wind rustled through the trees. Birds chirped overhead. Life went on around me while I sat there falling apart. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother-in-law. Please. I need to explain. Can I come see you? I almost didn't respond. Almost blocked her number and never spoke to her again. But something made me type back. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. My house. And you better tell me everything. She showed up early. I watched through the window as she sat in her car for several minutes, gathering courage. When she finally knocked, I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Thank you for seeing me, she said quietly. Talk. She took a breath. I need to tell you about Miles's grandfather. My husband. Your father-in-law. I know he had mental health issues. You already told me that. But you don't know everything. She looked down at her hands. He didn't just have bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. He was violent. When he had episodes, he would hurt people. Hurt me. My expression softened slightly. I lived in fear for years. She continued, her voice breaking, never knowing when he'd snap. When he'd become someone I didn't recognize. And I blamed myself. Because I didn't see the signs early enough. I didn't get him help when he was young. I thought if I just loved him enough, it would be okay. Tears were streaming down her face now. And then your husband, my son, started showing signs too. Mood swings, anger, paranoia. And I watched him struggle, watched him fight those demons. Until the accident. She trailed off. I felt my own tears starting. Because I knew what she was implying. My husband's accident hadn't been an accident. It had been suicide. He'd driven into that tree on purpose because he couldn't fight anymore. When Miles started showing similar symptoms, she whispered, I couldn't bear it. I couldn't watch another person I love suffer like that. So I tried to stop it. I tried to save him. By drugging him, I said, but my voice was softer now. I know it was wrong. I know I should have talked to you, should have taken him to a proper doctor, but I was so scared, so convinced that if I didn't act immediately, I'd lose him too. We stood there in silence for a long moment. Miles doesn't have a mental illness, I said finally. His symptoms were caused by the pills. He's going to be fine once they're out of his system. Relief flooded her face. Thank God. But you still put him in danger. You still made choices that weren't yours to make, and I don't know if I can forgive that. I understand, she said, nodding. I'll accept whatever consequences come. I just needed you to know why. I needed you to understand that I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was trying to save him. Sometimes, I said quietly, the people who hurt us most are the ones who think they're helping. She nodded again, tears still falling. I need time, I told her. Time to process this. Time to make sure Miles is okay. And then, maybe we can talk about what comes next. Thank you, she whispered. That's more than I deserve. And that day, I made a decision that changed our family forever. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. Child Protective Services opened an investigation. They interviewed me, Miles, Jacob, and my mother-in-law. They reviewed medical records, the lab reports, everything. In the end, they determined that while what happened was dangerous and illegal, it wasn't done with malicious intent. They issued warnings, mandated counseling for my mother-in-law, and closed the case with the stipulation that Miles would never be left alone with either of them again without my supervision. I was relieved, but I was also heartbroken, because I'd lost the two people I thought I could trust most. The two people who'd been my support system through the hardest years of my life. But I had to protect my son. That had to come first. I started therapy for Miles, found a wonderful child psychologist who specialized in trauma. She helped him process not just what had happened with the pills, but also the loss of his father. And slowly I watched my boy come back to life. His energy returned. His smile returned. That bright, silly kid I thought I'd lost forever. He was still there, just buried under months of medication that had dulled his spirit. As for me, I had to learn how to trust again. How to forgive. Not for them, but for me. Because carrying that anger was only hurting me. I set boundaries. Clear ones. My mother-in-law could see Miles, but only at my house, with me present. And if she ever crossed a line again, she'd be out of our lives permanently. Jacob. That relationship took longer to rebuild, but eventually, after months of family therapy, we found a way forward. He genuinely thought he was helping. He'd been manipulated by his mother just like I had been. But most importantly, I learned to trust myself, to trust my instincts, to never again ignore that voice in my head that says something isn't right. Because the truth is, I'd known. Deep down, I'd known something was wrong with those pills, with the way Miles was changing, with the way everything felt off, but I'd ignored it. Because I didn't want to believe that the people I loved could hurt me. I'll never make that mistake again. And if this story resonated with you, if it taught you something or made you think, please subscribe. These stories matter. Your support matters. And together, we can keep having these important conversations. Miles is 7 now. Happy, healthy, thriving. And every day, when I look at him, I'm reminded of how close I came to losing him. Not because of an accident. Not because of an illness. But because I trusted the wrong people. And sometimes, the people we trust the most are the ones we should have watched the closest.